You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Listening to the Bells of Liberty podcast, where freedom rings and the sassiness stings. Stay tuned for a little bit of sassy freedom.
Hello, and welcome to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we weren't able to post a new show last week due to some scheduling conflicts and some cranky baby problems, but we're back with plenty to talk about tonight. Before we get started, we wanted to take a moment to address some changes that will be happening for the Bells of Liberty. As we all know, life has a tendency to come up with lots of obligations and expectations, and priorities often shift or cause us to change track. In this case, our friend and fellow Belle Courtney has found that right now, family and other important obligations need to take priority over the show. Obviously, Rocky and Sammy and I understand, and we wish her the best. And of course, you'll still hear from her, as she will still join us as a guest host from time to time and give us her Courtney sass every once in a while. So good luck, Courtney. Thank you so much for the last 2 years, and we wish you the best as you move forward with everything that you're doing. And Rocky, our favorite Puerto Rican, will be stepping in as our new host. So welcome, Rocky. You're no longer a part-time Belle, and congratulations on the voluntary unpaid position.
Token Puerto Rican in the house. Hey. I'm doing a dance and everything. It's fantastic.
You don't get a raise, no.
Yeah, it's not going to get
raise
a raise
on free. So.
No raise. Don't get too excited.
Out.
Sorry. So anyway, thank you for joining us now. And now that we've shared our news, let's get to our world news. For instance, the state of Oregon has taken the next step to a eugenic state and also a socialist government when they elected to remove 2 children from their parents' care because their IQs are too low. Apparently, that's an appropriate way to tell if someone can parent or not. In continued government brilliance, a scandal is brewing in the Democratic wing of Congress. Can't wait to see where this leads. And Article 7 is the next up on our Constitutorial, and of course, a new Ring the Belle. So, Rocky, it's your topic. Let's get started.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Some of our listeners may remember that I am the mother of an autistic child, and as such, my daughter is going to be facing multiple challenges. One of them is developmental delay. Therefore, whenever a story such as the one that we're going to be discussing today comes across my news feed, it always receives my immediate attention, and this one will shock and horrify you. A very lengthy column in The Oregonian written by Samantha Swindler narrates the story of Amy Fabbrini and Eric Ziegler. They're a couple of 31 and 38 years of age respectively, and they've been fighting with the state of Oregon and their Department of Human Services over the custody of their 2 biological children, Christopher and Hunter. What makes the story shocking is that according to the state's DHS, these 2 people are incapable of raising their own children because their IQs are considered below average. Amy's IQ is 72, which is extremely low to borderline range of intelligence, and Eric's is 66, which is clinically determined as a mild range of intellectual disability. I read the article. It's fairly lengthy. I'll be posting a link to the source because I really want all of our listeners to read this article thoroughly. There is no indication anywhere in which the state of Oregon has found any kind of valid proof of abuse or neglect, and they have just arbitrarily decided to confiscate these children because they feel that the parents aren't smart enough to safely and appropriately care for their children, or they feel that these children might, in some off chance, be put in a situation in which their lives might be in danger. But there's no actual proof that any of these things have happened to these children. What really struck me about this story is that Amy's youngest child, Hunter, was born in February, and while she was in the hospital recovering from childbirth, DHS came in and literally ripped this baby out of her arms. So she never had the chance to spend that bonding time with that child, hours or the first couple of days since that child has been born. And this just puts me at a level of outrage that I don't think I've ever felt in my life before. The initial complaint came from Amy's father, who, in all honesty, he seems to be like a total tool. If you ask my professional opinion, of course. He was the first one to deem that she was unfit to be a mother. This prompted social workers to come in and monitor their parenting skills over Christopher, who's now 5 years old, and he's currently under the care of a foster family. There was a social worker who was working directly with Eric and Amy. She was monitoring the visits. Her name is Shireen
Hagenbach.
Can't find Shireen Hagenbach. I couldn't remember her last name. Shireen Hagenbach. She was working with I guess like a nonprofit organization, and she was trying to give them pointers as to how to take care of their children. And at no point did she see any proof of neglect or lack of appropriate care for these children. And when she brought this to the attention of her superiors, they basically dismissed her and said, well, you're not needed anymore. Basically because she's not fitting into the narrative that the state of Oregon wants in order to justify these children from being taken away from their parents' care. So according to one of the social workers, one of the reasons why this couple is unfit to have their children is because they failed to tell their 5-year-old son, Christopher, that he needs to wash his hands after he uses the bathroom, and that he should put sunscreen all over his body instead of just his face. So that's of course
obviously
important.
That should lead to removal from the home because everybody,
you're a bad parent.
Everybody knows that washing your hands and putting on sunscreen is the only thing you should teach your children.
It's the qualifier for being the ideal parent, apparently.
Clearly.
And also, according to the state of Oregon, the foster family that's taking care of Christopher, and I believe the same family is taking care of Hunter, well, they're able to financially provide for these kids and give them a better life and a better education. It's like, if that's the case, then the richest man in the planet can take care of my child because they have the financial means to give my child the appropriate care of what the state of Oregon determines is the appropriate care. So to add insult to injury, state has gotten to a point in which they've stayed in foster care long enough that I believe in the coming weeks they're actually going to be available to be adopted by another family. So time is running out for Amy and Eric. Amy and Eric have done everything that the state has asked them to do. They've taken parenting classes. They've taken nutrition classes. They've done absolutely everything the state has asked them to do in order to keep their children. And it seems like every time they complete one of these requirements the state gives them, the state says, no, that's not enough. So when is enough state of Oregon?
Right. Well, not only that, but the social worker who was on the case deemed them to be fit parents. Mm-hmm. They said they were fine. They fired the social worker. The state of Oregon fired the social worker for saying that they were fine as parents and the children could be in the home with them.
Is a 20-year veteran of the CPS department. So you would think if anybody would know what the state is looking for when they go in to do these visits, it would be someone who's been doing it for 20 years. And yet somehow this person doesn't know what she's talking about now because she's disagreeing with the state. So there's so many things about the story that just infuriate me because I am someone who works with low-income families. And I see the best and the worst of families when I go to work. I see some people who obviously adore their kids, who would do anything for them, want them to have the best life they possibly can. You know, everything they do is to make sure that their kids are taken care of. And then I see some that, you know, will drop their kids at off at school and will leave them there all day, even if they have the day off. Who will disappear overnight and leave their kids with essentially any family member that might take them, because they've got stuff going on in their lives. I've worked with families where the kids have tested positive for drugs in their system because their parent was smoking or otherwise taking drugs around them, and have had heavy TVs fall on them, have had injuries that are unexplained, have, had a slew of things wrong. And yet those families get chance after chance after chance to get their kids back. And this family has done everything that's been asked of them, has not had a single confirmed report of neglect or abuse. Nothing that's actually confirmed or could actually be used as a reason to remove them from the family. And yet here they are having to prove themselves over and over and over again to a system that does not give a crap. This is a power play.
Well, and I heard an interview with Amy talking, and she and Shireen were on the interview together. There were points where you could not tell which one was speaking. Like, Amy does not sound like she doesn't know what's going on. And she has said, like, I don't care that people are going to make fun of me or call me stupid or whatever. She's like, these are my kids. It's worth it to me to get my kids back. And that just breaks my heart. I mean, obviously, Jana and I have been, mandatory reporters for CPS for years. There are so many people who, you think like, oh, there should be a litmus test for who can have kids, before you can be a parent. And Amy wouldn't fall on that list. She wouldn't even be flagged on that list because there's no reason.
Right. Well, and if the state had their way, you'd think she was a drooling mess. And to be totally honest, I fell for it because my mom and I, when we were listening to one of the interviews that she was on, we were torn because it's like, well, okay, what's the backstory? Did they find something? And maybe it's something to do with something she did that she's not doing it because she's negligent. She just doesn't know any better. That's maybe they found something. And then to find out that there was nothing, and then to hear her speak. And I felt ashamed because I was actually surprised at how smart she sounded. She was articulate. You could understand what she was saying. She wasn't saying anything any true parent wouldn't say. So, it's heartbreaking that something like government can walk into your home and deem you unfit to be a parent when you haven't done anything that's shown that. And yet we've got families that prove it every friggin' day that they are unfit to be parents. There are people with PhDs, people who have obviously I don't have a master's degree because I can't say it, but, people who are supposedly genius level people. And they would make the worst parents because it's not about them anymore. It's about their kids. And that's something that often gets lost in education when you're focused on bettering yourself. It's not about your kids. So it's just disturbing.
There are two points that I want to bring to light. There's one thing that I found when I was researching and reading more information about this case, because it was so shocking to me that I'm like, there has to be more to this story than just their IQ. There has to be something. There's nothing. That's the only thing that's preventing them. And what the horrifying thing is that there are 35 states in this country that can confiscate your children if they feel that you're not intelligent enough, or that if you have a disability, they can terminate your parental rights. So this isn't limited just to the state of Oregon. It's happening in the state of Oregon, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen somewhere else. And to continue discussing the part about what qualifies you as a parent, there's a breaking news story right now out of California, San Jose, California. A couple was traveling from Tacoma to San Jose, or San Jose to Tacoma, Washington. I'm not sure which is which. I don't care. The whole point of the story is that a woman was on a flight, and the passenger sitting in front of her she was seeing that the person in front of her was texting to someone about sexually abusing their 5 and 7-year-old children. And these people were just arrested and the children were taken away from them. I bet you that these people, the state of Oregon would consider them to be perfectly fit parents. Based on their standard, the metric that they're using of intelligence, then these people would have been perfectly fine parents. But Amy and Eric aren't smart enough to have their own kids, but this other couple can sexually abuse their kids. And this is to the point that you two ladies were talking about. How we see parents out there that actually are causing harm to their children. There's parents out there that kill their kids. But Amy and Eric can't keep their kids because their kids don't wash their hands after they use the bathroom.
We condemn people before they actually do things because they think they know what's going to happen. Because she doesn't have a high IQ, she could do something wrong. Something could happen to these kids. There is no such thing as innocent until proven guilty anymore. I think that's something that we've forgotten. And there's so much more that could be said about this topic, but I think we've probably hit our time. Right, Sammy?
Yeah, we're going to have to move on to somebody who we know is guilty in our next topic, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. We are going to move into this Debbie Wasserman Schultz scandal. Gina, do you want to break it down for us and let us know what's going on?
Well, I will certainly try because this is an incredibly confusing story and will probably take longer than this segment will allow, but I will do my best to get the information out there so that everyone can keep an eye out for an update because this is definitely something we should all be paying attention to. And I'm sure there will be more information coming out soon, and hopefully some repercussions for the behavior that we've been seeing, even though I sincerely doubt that will happen. So at the end of July, there was a news story that came out that was about an IT employee of Congress, specifically in the DNC Democratic Party wing, who was caught trying to go back to Pakistan, which is his native country, under suspicion of having stolen some equipment from the DNC. Well, because scandals are rampant in this administration and in government in general, I think pretty much everybody sort of just blew it off because it's just one more scandal story that keeps coming out, and it's hard to tell what's important and what's not. And this didn't really seem like anything until you start breaking it down and realize that this is actually kind of a scary story just from what's out now. And if you want a good breakdown of the timeline, I know Glenn Beck just did an episode on August 2nd with Think Tank that has a laid out timeline of who this person is, the people that he associated and worked with, and kind of what led up to this July 24th report. So Imran Awan was a gentleman who was hired originally by Robert Wexler of the Democratic Party. He was hired as an IT employee for Congress. And what's already suspicious about this is that Imran doesn't really have much of a history. Like, you try to look into who this person is, and there is nothing to find. There's no background, no idea if he's actually qualified to work in IT, no idea where he came from or how he was qualified for this position. And yet, in 2004, started working for the U.S. government in IT. That in itself maybe isn't such a big deal to the layperson because, obviously, in order to work for Congress, you have to go through copious background checks and other security clearances before you can even start working for them. So one would hope that the government that's really good at spying on its citizens would be really good at determining if this gentleman was a threat or not. 2004 rolls around, he starts working for the government in IT, then moves on. 2005, 2006, Imran decides he needs to have a team. And in the span of a year, manages to hire one little brother, his wife, his best friend, another friend, and another little brother, all working in the same department. I don't know about you guys, but if I even have a second job that might conflict with my current full-time job, I have to let them know so that I can sign a conflict of interest form. And if I were, let's say, if my dad, who's a graphic artist, was hired by my current employer in order to do some advertising or come up for logos or things like that, I would also have to let them know that he's my father and have to sign a conflict of interest form. So it kind of surprises me that a whole group of people who are either related or BFFs are suddenly getting these jobs. If that's not suspicious enough, all of these people are making upwards of $140,000 a year in salary, which is almost $100,000 more than the average IT person makes every year. It's between $40,000 and $50,000, even for someone who has an incredible amount of experience, and is about, I want to say, $20,000 to $30,000 less than the best paid congressperson on Capitol Hill right now. In about I don't know how many years they worked for Congress, they took in about $4 million in total salary working in IT. And one of the friends, before he became an IT person, worked at McDonald's. Not saying you can't get a degree in IT while you're working at McDonald's, but again, no background on these people. This person also doesn't have any background, so there's really no reason to believe they would be qualified for this position. So as the years progress, these people start making some pretty shady looking financial decisions. They're buying each other's houses. They're getting loans through the Capitol Hill Credit Union. Apparently they have their own bank on Capitol Hill. I did not know this, but apparently people who are in Congress can go to this bank in order to get their loans and do their, daily banking and whatnot. They're getting loans, buying each other's houses. They buy a used car dealership as a group. And not only do they buy a used car dealership, they call it the CIA, which stands for Cars International A. Couldn't even come up with something that goes with A. Like, I don't know, association. Just
That's
the
not suspicious at all.
A. My dad joked perhaps they're Canadian. But I don't know. Possibly. Yeah. Possibly not. So they bought the car dealership, and then all of a sudden, they are starting to file for bankruptcy, in which they get a bailout from a gentleman who is known, or at least suspected, as causing the Iraq War to begin. And they get I'm not even sure, it was $150,000 from this person, which when you're bankrupt for several $1 million, kind of seems like a drop in the bucket. So really what's that all about? So as the years progress, they start making these fraudulent financial decisions. And the wife of Imran Awan decides she's going to go back to Pakistan shortly before all of this starts. She takes, I think it was $20,000 with her, and he's actually caught trying to send over $300,000 to Pakistan. So there's a lot more detail to go on with this story. I can't get into it all now. I don't even have all the information because it's difficult to tell who's who, who's doing what, why are they here, what are they doing. But what's worse is what's drawn my attention is that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has gone out of her way to protect this man, going on so far as to continue to pay this person, even though he was banned from being anywhere near congressional computers or servers. She kept him on in an advisory capacity and still paid him as though he were doing a job, and then was actually threatening the police. I believe it was the police commissioner who's in charge of the part of the investigation, actually threatened him that there will be consequences because he would not return the computer that they found on him when he was caught, claiming that it was her property. So even though she's not under investigation, she doesn't understand why he's not returning it to her. Well, lo and behold, today a new story comes out and she claims, I don't own the laptop. I don't know what's on it. I don't even know what it looks like. And yet went out of her way to threaten a police commissioner with keeping her property.
Very publicly, too.
Very publicly. And so has gone out of her way to protect this man. Even further down the rabbit hole, now Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother has been slated to represent this man in court. Again, what's that thing? Oh, conflict of interest? So this is a little disturbing.
I was thinking this thing is just getting incestuous.
Yes.
It's a little bit. It is a little bit, and it's so difficult to tell what the end goal of it is. Are these people moles from some country that, they're here trying to get information about the U.S. because obviously when you're working in IT, if you're working on someone's computer, you're going to have access to a lot of stuff that maybe you shouldn't have access to. And even if you don't have the login to get to the really top secret stuff that they might be seeing, that doesn't mean if you don't have the skills that you can, maybe hack into their computer and figure out what they've been talking about, what decisions are being made, what committees are going up for whatever.
Oh, I was going to say, or with all of the people involved in this case, all of these family and friends that are involved in the case, who's to say that any of these people don't have additional associations who can hack into these computers and actually find out what's in them?
Right. So worst case scenario, these people are spies, and we've just caught a spy ring, and pretty much as close to Congress as you can get without actually being in Congress. Or these people have been running a scam because we fund ISIS whether we want to or not at this point. However, if they're funding a scam, this money is now being sent back to Pakistan, and no doubt to things like ISIS, Muslim Brotherhood, any of that, to fund terrorism. That would be suspicious on its own, and go figure that it would come through the freaking Democratic Party, which in some cases is kind of like ISIS here at home. But those are worst case scenarios. But there's no way to really tell at this point, and it's just disturbing that we've got people who are so high in our government that are willing to defend them. Do they have something on these people because they were willing to keep them on all through this point? So are they involved in this fraudulent scam? I want to know why of all the things they could have bought, why did they buy a used car dealership? Was it to hide stuff in? I don't know. I'm just, there's so many questions and no answers.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz has been outspoken, this is discrimination. This is, racially motivated because he's Muslim, or because he's Middle Eastern, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, they caught him at the airport trying to sneak into Pakistan. There's not,
with her iPad.
You don't get caught more red-handed.
Yeah, he had apparently had an iPad of hers.
You can't get more red-handed than that.
Right. So at this point, it's not about what country he's from or what religion he might have. He's clearly doing something illegal. And if it's racist to take down criminals, then SMOD, come quickly, because we're done. It's just, it's infuriating how quickly people on the progressive side of the aisle are willing to defend people who should not be defended. Whatever this guy is doing, whether it's financial fraud or spying, he's doing something illegal and he needs to be stopped. He and his family and BFFs and whoever else is working for Congress, they all need to be caught and put behind bars because they did something illegal. And it is certainly something that anybody else would be put behind bars for. And she's going, well, I'm defending him because it was the right thing to do. You know what? And the Photoshop in your Vanity Fair photographs was the right thing to do too, but we still point out that was not right, not accurate. So I'm kind of freaked out because, the more you look into the timeline of these people, what they've been doing, and the fact there's no answers as to what they were doing or why they were doing or even what their background is, it just makes it all the more scary that someone like that could get as close as they did to people who run our country.
And to me, this is almost like Fast and Furious gun running operation on acid. It's like, this is Fast and Furious 2.0. You're doing something so illegal and you're getting so many people involved that at this point, you're basically, like you said earlier, Gina, this is basically funding terrorism. We don't know where this money is going. And it doesn't really matter where the money's going. The fact that it's being moved over to Pakistan, that it's going to be filtered through car dealerships and things like that. The money's going to be laundered and it's going to end up in the hands of someone or some organizations that are going to use that money against us and destroy the country more than the Democrats are doing.
Well, let's just not forget that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the one who had to resign from the DNC because they were screwing over their own party. So let's not pretend that she has any moral high ground to stand on when she's saying she's doing the right thing. It's clear that she's never done the right thing at all. And it's, if you can't take the heat, cheat.
Yeah, well, they're good at that. And she especially is. So it's not surprising that she's squawking in support of someone who could easily be doing something that will harm our country. So I don't know. We all need to keep an eye on this. We need to be vigilant. And frankly, if this comes out that there are members of Congress, whether they're liberal or Republican, if they were doing something illicit, they need to be held accountable. We can't go through another Hillary Clinton getting away with stuff that, she should not be getting away with just because they happen to sit on what you consider the right side of the aisle. So keep an eye on it. I'm sure we'll update you guys more in the future as things come out. The story's kind of been slow going, but he is currently, I think, on trial and has been since February of this year, I believe. So was it February of this year? I might have that wrong. There's so many dates to keep straight on this. It's difficult, but we'll share stories as we find them and keep you updated. So be vigilant, guys. It's here.
All right. Well, that ends that segment. We're going to come up with the next Constitutorial, so stay with us.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. This segment we call the Constitutorial, where we go over segments of the Constitution. We are getting to the end. This is the final article, and it's Article 7. And it's really short, guys. So I'll just read it straight up. So it says, the ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same, which is really jumbled. But it's basically saying we're all here. We've all come to the end of this convention, and we're going to start voting on it to see if we all like it. So the Constitutional Convention took place in 1787, and they were writing up all this stuff. There were people coming in and out of the convention from all of the different colonies and, well, states now, but they were still technically colonies. They got together and they said, we finally, got this down. It's time to put pen to paper. It took 2 years for all of the states to adopt the Constitution. So the first state to adopt the Constitution was Delaware, and it was unanimous, 30-0 vote. And the last one to join was Rhode Island, and it was 34-32 voting on if they approved this Constitution or not. In these two years, they were saying, it's not perfect, we get it, but let's just get these basic ideals down so we can have a functioning government. This is when George Washington was going to be put as the president. And then that's when we get to the Bill of Rights, which we will cover next week. But it's just, it's really quick, simple. It's not that complicated. But of course, obviously it's important because it's how our Constitution was ratified and made the supreme law of the country.
So short but sweet, kind of how the Declaration of Independence works.
And
right. It gets to the point of cross.
I was going to say, it's like the beautiful thing about the Constitution is how all of these articles kind of meld together. Because in reading the very short sentence that pertains to to Article 7, it just keeps reminding me to the Convention of States as we had discussed on Article 5. So it's actually kind of magical to see how everything comes together and how after this process happens, this is what you end up with. And this is how the process, went. So it's nice to see everything kind of come together. It's not a dusty old document. It's a document with a purpose. And if you really look at it and you really study it, you see what the intent was.
Right. And you see that it was, everyone didn't come together and say, yes, we all agree on these rules. It took everyone debating and everyone giving input on, oh, this is important. This is important to this place. Can we all just agree that this is our baseline and go from there? And then we get states' rights. So it's very, the 2 weeks that it took them to come up with this, they based it obviously off of the Federalist Papers, but the 2 weeks that they came together, I mean, this wasn't like the internet. We had airplanes to fly them. They were coming on horseback from Georgia to, from Rhode Island, all these places to come together because it was important to them that we have a framework that could hold us together through thick and thin. And obviously we've had a civil war, and we came out the other side of that. So even though right now everything is really up in the air and tensions are really high between the two parties, the law is the same, and it's still the supreme law of the land, and it still protects everybody equally.
And that's a good thing, even for people who are like, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Who in her world the rules don't apply to her.
Exactly. They work for everyone else, but not for her, which is why she gets to threaten a police commissioner and get away with it. Anyway.
Law? What?
Yeah, what? So, yeah, I think perhaps it mattered more to these people because they had to invest so much time into it, because they had to come from places that were far away, because they had to risk life and limb, essentially, because they didn't have a highway system like we do now where it's nice and safe and you don't have to worry about bears eating you on your way to, work. So I think that there was a lot of investment in this, and a lot of them had already put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it because they had to survive the revolution in order to get to where they were at. Whereas people today have not had to work too hard for their freedoms. They kind of have just had it handed to them. So when we talk about stuff like this, they start glazing over, but I think they might miss it when it's gone. So it would be nice if we could try to get people a little bit more on board with the Constitution is a thing we should protect. Because our rights are something we should protect and not hand them over, especially when we're seeing case after case, like Amy Fabbrini, for instance, what we just talked about. Charlie Gard might be across the pond, but that doesn't mean that his situation isn't something that we're not going to see here. And I know that's a little far away from Article 7, but, it all ties together. It's, we're all one. We are the world. Blah, 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 blah. So, just saying, we should take it a little bit more seriously. And I know we three do, and I know we know people who do, but it would be nice to see more people on board and for the right reasons. That's my rant. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Like I said, it's like people don't seem to realize how valuable the Constitution is to the country and to the way that we live. We always think of how other countries live, like the situation going on in Venezuela, how dire it's become. It's a jungle. It's a jungle down there. They don't have what we have. And people who want to change the Constitution or want to do away with it, it's like, do you understand what's going to happen to the United States if we do away with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? We're going to end up like Venezuela, and it's not going to look good for us. Venezuela is a rich country. They're sitting on a huge source of petroleum, and they can't do anything because they basically don't have the money or the energy to work on that and get themselves out of the funk that they're in. They have a horrible government system that, is rounding the opposition up and tossing them in jail and making them disappear just because they're speaking up against what's going on. So, people need to understand these documents are here for a reason. And the reason why the United States is the way that it is, despite all of its flaws, is because of the Constitution. We get rid of it, we're not going to survive 100 years without it. We are not. We're not going to survive 50 years without it.
Right. I mean, and the most important thing, I think, is to remember we're not a democracy. We're a republic. We're a constitutional republic, meaning that our Constitution is the law of the land. We don't want a direct democracy like we're seeing in other countries because it's like you said, it's a jungle out there. So this was fun going through this. Like I said, next week we're going to start going over the amendments. We'll start with the Bill of Rights and work our way through some of the more less known ones. So stay tuned for that. We got to leave it there because we got to ring the bell next, guys.
Woohoo! Ring, ring, ring. Oh, wait, that's more of a phone.
Ding-a-ling,
Dang
ding-a-ling.
it. I'll get it right one of these days.
Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. It's our favorite time of the show. It's time to ring the bell. Okay, so we were gone last week, but we have the polls from the week previous, so I'm going to read them to you. And so let's see. We asked if kids should be given attendance trophies. 52% of you said let kids be kids, and 48% of you said no awards ever. Okay, Ron Swanson's. And then we asked, will you guys watch the female Doctor Who? 38% of you said allons-y, which means let's go in French. And doctors are not required, 48% of you, and 14% of you said the future is female. And then our final poll was, should Facebook be all dogs? And I feel like there was only one wrong answer that said dogs stink, and that was 21%. And then Peppers and Doggos.
If you voted that way, by the way,
43%.
Unfollow us right now.
Yes, you don't need to listen to the show. You can just go. Goodbye.
Well, I didn't mention this to anyone, but I live in the country now, and one of the dogs got into a skunk, and he stinks so bad. I always want to pet dogs. I don't want to pet him. I'm like, get away from me, Smelly. So those are our polls from last week. I know. And let's start off with Jana because she's got another dog / pet story. So Jana, you want to start us off?
Well, of course, because my day would not be complete without talking about animals in some capacity. So everyone knows that the vaccination situation is still a hot topic these days. Lots of people are anti-vaccines. Lots of people are for vaccines. If you ask me, vaccinations are a thing. They are important. And unless your kid has a legitimate medical condition that prevents them from having vaccinations, your child should be vaccinated, because I, for one, am not a fan of polio or mumps or measles or things that have started to make their way back into our systems, because we're not vaccinating our kids as well as we should. That's neither here nor there. Because that's a debate, obviously this has bled over into the hipster dog owner millennial movement, because a lot of people my age are not having kids, they are having pets. I am one of those people because I am not married and do not have any children yet, but I would like to think that I'm perhaps at a different level than some of these people. Because I get my dogs vaccinated, and apparently the issue in this story is that people are actually genuinely concerned about getting their pets vaccinated because they're afraid their dogs will get autism.
What?
So even though there's no proof that actually vaccinating your children causes autism in children, apparently there is a very real fear that keeps coming up at physicals for puppies and dogs and stuff, that people are very, very concerned about vaccinating their dogs because they're afraid their dog is going to end up with autism, even though there has never been a single case of natural or otherwise autism in a dog. Ever.
These people are so stupid that everybody's going to have to excuse me for a minute while I go get my eyes, because I rolled so hard that they popped out of my skull. This is absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. The kind of vaccines that the dogs get are for rabies, for heartworms, for all of these diseases that, the dogs will acquire during the course of their lives. It is not going to cause autism. Like Jana said, it doesn't cause autism in children. If that were the case, then every child in this country that gets vaccinated would have autism, which is just completely not true. And for these people to use this lie and apply it to dogs is absolutely moronic.
I mean, I'm like honestly trying to like picture what a dog with autism would even like. How would you even know?
I know. Like you just look at it and yep, my dog has autism. I mean, he's looking at me funny. Oh, diagnosis is on the way. Web DVM says my dog is autistic. Like
my dog's nonverbal.
Like what? How the heck? Like I had a friend who was really gullible, and I told her that like dogs bark in different languages, and she believed me. And so then I was like trying to see if I could really push it, and I told her that babies cried in different languages, and she bought that too. But now I want to like text her and be like, "Hey, did you know dogs can get autism?" Because like,
it's like this is almost like a story from The Onion. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I checked just to make sure I wasn't reading something from The Onion, but this is actually a legit news source. So I just,
oh my god!
Oh, I've been pumping my dogs full of chemicals, and now they're probably irreversibly damaged.
Oh my god!
I'm sorry, Hank and Daisy, for keeping you safe from rabies and distemper and giving you autism.
Oh my god.
It's making the frogs gay.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Okay, well, now that we're coming down from that level of stupid, what new thing is going on, guys? Who's next?
You want to talk stupid? How stupid do you want to get?
I'm kind of nervous at this point. I don't know if it could get much more stupid.
Oh, brace yourself, ladies. Brace yourselves, because Lena Dunham is back in the news.
Is she clothed?
Lena Dunham, well, she had to, because she had to be at the airport.
Well, I don't think that would stop her. I'm just asking, was she clothed?
I'll have to watch the footage from JFK, because apparently Lena Dunham, quote, overheard two American Airlines flight attendants speak ill about trans people and trans teenagers, and she was insulted and offended that these two people weren't on the trans bandwagon. So she decided to tweet at American Airlines and let them know, hey, listen, there's these two employees, these two flight attendants of yours that are, saying bad things about trans people and how this is a trend and how this isn't right and so on and so forth. Well, American Airlines, because, they focus on customer service and this is what they do, they decide to do a little bit of research. They get the full story, according to Miss Dunham, of what happened, talking about how trans children are gross, and American Airlines looked into it, and the results are in. American Airlines has found absolutely no proof of this event happening.
No kidding. Because Lena Dunham has never had any other instances of potentially lying out her face about things that did not happen to her at all ever in the history of ever.
And, the funny thing is that when you read the story, so the story, according, Lena Dunham was at JFK Airport. Anybody who has flown out of JFK Airport, me being one of them, because I lived in New York for 10 years, and JFK was my airport to fly out of. JFK has 8 terminals, and the terminals are divided by, or the airlines are divided by terminals. So Terminal 2 is Delta, which is the airliner that Miss Dunham was flying out of, and American Airlines is all the way in Terminal 8 on the other side of the airport. In order for you to get to each terminal, you have to either take a train or the bus or a car. So I'm really wondering, how is it that Miss Dunham was in Terminal 2 Delta and found two American Airlines flight attendants talking about something when there was no, according to American Airlines, they checked their flight schedules and there were no flights coming in or out at the time that Miss Dunham claimed that these two flight attendants were having this conversation. And I'm really curious as to how two American Airlines flight attendants were at the Delta terminal instead of being at the American Airlines terminal, because I don't know much about, the perks that employees get. But if you're an employee of an airline, even if you need to fly to a destination because that's where you're going to work for the evening, wouldn't you be flying with your own brand of airline? Like, wouldn't you use the same, if you're American Airlines, wouldn't you fly American Airlines? So I'm really curious as to how.
One would hope, they'd be sticking to their own.
Yeah, so it's like I'm curious to know. And you know what, Miss Dunham, may I respectfully call you Miss Dunham, and that's about all the respect that I'll give you. JFK is full of cameras, so I'm pretty sure that American Airlines just tapped into the camera at the location where you said you were, and when they saw that there weren't any flight attendants there, they probably called BS on your story. So I'm glad that American Airlines was like, yeah, no, we couldn't find anything, and you just end up stupid like you always do, because that's what you are, Lena Dunham.
Habitual liar.
Lena Dunham is probably going to be mad. Lena Dunham is probably going to be mad at my story because there's a pastor in New Jersey who says his now 10-year-old son, they allowed him to identify as a girl since the age of 2, a pastor, okay? And he said that they made this decision because he gravitated towards, quote, all things girly, and was so unhappy with his life as a boy at the age of 2 that he tried to kill himself. I'm sorry. I'm about to get all biblical on you guys, but if your 2-year-old is trying to commit suicide, it's probably a demon. I mean, you look up Matthew chapter 17-14 and you can read it for yourselves, but you're probably dealing with a demon, because no 2-year-old knows how to, has suicidal thoughts. Okay. This is just like, my eyeballs rolled out of my head when I heard this story. And so for any other group of person who says, oh yeah, we need to be accepting, but for a pastor to do this, to admit that God made a mistake making your child the wrong gender would completely change the character of God, because God is supposed to be perfect, and that is supposed to be the faith that you proclaim, and that God is sovereign over all. So you should not be leading a flock if you believe that God is not perfect. And so that's my little preachy message. Run and tell that, ring the bell. We're out of time. So Jana, you want to tell them where they can find us? And we got to close it out.
Okay, well, if you are interested in joining us for one of our podcast parties, our show does drop on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can join us on Twitter at Bells of Liberty. Otherwise, you can also find us on Facebook at The Bells of Liberty. We post both sites, but we do use Twitter for our podcast parties, so feel free, join in. If you miss any of our shows or just want to go back and listen to the sultry sound of our voices, you can find us on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play Music. So please stop by, listen to our past shows, and keep up with our future shows, because there will be more, hopefully, obviously. I mean, why wouldn't there be? That wasn't rhetorical.
I will be here. I had sinners, the dog barking,
staring at me. So anyway, feel free to join us on any of those platforms. Like I said, reach out if you've got any suggestions for the show. If you have anything you'd like to say, even if it's not so nice, we can take it. We're big girls. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
See ya.
for listening to the Bells of Liberty podcast. Want to listen to more sassy content? All shows are available free on demand on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play Music. Have something to say? You can find us on Twitter @Bells of Liberty, and also on Facebook, www.facebook.com/The Bells of Liberty. And as always, keep calm and ring on.